Right, welcome back everyone. And so the question I gave you is actually a real one. This came up when we did a project with a large manufacturer working with a chain of grocery stores, and they wanted to promote multiple items at one time. And part of promotion is advertising. And the question is, how much should I advertise on for each product? How much should I focus the promotion on different products? And they had like 10 products promoted at one time. And the question was, how much should I allocate it across that? Because you always want more than your budget allows. Pretty much the case. And so most students, when I give this to someone, the first gut is, if I say, well, you've got 80% of your budget, the knee-jerk reaction of most people is everyone gets cut 80% because that's fair. That's uniform. And so, Amat, did anyone recommend the across the board 80%? Any of the groups?
No,
I doubt it,
yeah.
because I kind of
No,
set it up
yeah.
as that was a straw man, doesn't make sense. But the next common one that students will do, will recommend is, okay, find the best product, and that could be the highest margin, the biggest seller, whatever it is you want to protect, give that all of its budget. Then whatever's left, go to the next one, all right? And so it's kind of a sequential, take care of the best one, and then you go down. And so what that means is the last one or two will be way underfunded.
Interestingly, the breakout room has the same suggestion.
Okay.
You know, to find the highest cost shortage and then go to the next.
Yeah, so you allocate along that way. It's kind of arbitrary and it doesn't really work. And you can try this. And what I've done in classes before is we do this live and have people try to figure this out. What other approaches? Anyone else come with anything
Allocate
interesting?
Product proportionally to critical ratio. So maybe it's the
But so let's say I have a critical ratio of 0.8, 0.7, and 0.6. So you say in accordance to, but we're not at Harvard, so we have to use real numbers, right? We're here at MIT. So the question is, how do you translate that? Because you're in the right direction. And so the way to do this, actually, it's a tricky problem. It's an optimization problem. I want to maximize the profit given the Q. So for 3 products, I've got 3 decision variables, Q1, Q2, Q3, QI. And I want to subject this to the cost of each Q, CI times QI, is less than, the sum of that is less than my budget. And so you could actually solve this as an optimization. It's actually, you can do it as an unconstrained, if you take a Lagrangian. We didn't cover this, and some of you probably have never heard that word before, but it's a way of doing an unconstrained optimization using first order conditions. But you can come up with a nice approach where you take this shadow price, this value M, right? And you reduce them, each quantity by a certain amount. And you're right, it kind of falls in proportion to the critical ratio. So those with the highest critical ratio get reduced less. It's an iterative process. And what I can do is send something that can get posted if anyone's interested in it. And it's covered in different higher level textbooks. But the point I wanted to get across is that first approach, which I guarantee you is 90% of the way that a store manager would think, and a lot of management people think. Just like when you have a budget cut for a department, what do? You cut all the departments equally, even though you're not looking at what they provide and what they cost. For this case, it's a mathematical way to allocate based on the critical ratio, and it's really just a maximization problem. Does that make sense?
how about doing simulation and different scenarios?
You could do that as well, but the challenge, simulation versus optimization. Simulation, you're shooting in the dark. You try one, see what it does. Okay, try another one, is it better? Okay, try another one.
Yeah.
And so you can do that and simulate, but the big thing is this M value that you're gonna calculate, the shadow price, it's applied uniformly to all the products. That doesn't mean the Qs get reduced uniformly, but it allows you to have one lever, right? And essentially it's saying how much is one additional unit of budget valued to product 1, product 2, product 3. And so you just ratchet that a little bit and it allocates each of the products accordingly.
So how robust is the solution?
Oh, it's optimal. And the challenge is, how do you actually solve it? I mean, and so it's an iterative process where you pick an M and you can kind of go and you branch, you kind of bracket it. And so you pick a low M, see what that is, pick a high one, because the M will only go between 0 and 1, because it's a percentage, right? And so you just try to bracket in and try to find the value. It's a very quick iterative process. Then it works fairly well. Interestingly, the students with the project, they went and found this. They used this to solve the problem, and they presented it to the companies, and this is great, and they're implementing it. Or they implemented it. This was probably 7-8 years ago. But one of the other things, and you'll learn about this if you take SC2x, when we start talking about contracts, buyback contracts, and things like that, because what they really found is, well, maybe there's a better way to encourage the retailer to buy more by maybe doing something on the other and sharing some of the risk. So in later courses, we'll talk and apply exactly the same single period news vendor models to a contract, supply chain risk contracts. And that's a very hot research area.
Yep.
That's where it's most widely used. Because what you really want to do, it benefits both parties, in this case of a manufacturer and a retailer, for the retailer to order more and try and encourage them to increase their order. Because as we were discussing, in many cases, the cost of shortage is felt more, the cost of excess is felt more by the retailer than by the manufacturer, so they would naturally not order as much, right? And so we want to try and encourage them to order more.
How can you relate the postponement of the order into this news vendor problem? Like when you are ordering a T-shirt, you can order a white T-shirt first, and then postpone the coloring next, so then you can buy some time.
Yeah, so that's essentially what the Reebok case was essentially, right? Whether you do the faster and slightly less quality ones, or do you order further in advance? So think of it to the very first case that I talked about. One is dedicated, right? It's cheaper to do it where you buy it already done. It takes longer versus this one where you have to modify. It's usually at a higher cost, right? And so the question, you don't rely on that because you could do that 100%. But the question is, that's a very high cost, and it doesn't make sense because you're going to have a guaranteed level of volume that you're going to obtain. You assume you're going to hit something, so why not go out to the lower cost option for that earlier? And then the whole trick is, where do I draw that line between the rapid response expensive one and the less expensive, but you're dedicated on those. So it's all about where you draw that line. And you see this in so many different settings. We saw it in the Reebok case for T-shirts, for spot and contract manufacturing. You see it in transportation for dedicated. You see it in tomatoes. You see it all over the place, wherever you have the trade-off of a fixed amount, but you're kind of locked in, and then the spot, or the flexible amount, and that usually costs more. And that's what the postponement is, because the postponement usually costs a little more or is slightly less quality, and so it might reduce your revenue a little bit. So in either way, it's the same trade-off.
Okay, one maybe kind of less questions in general one. What are the possible results of a poor planning? If we do wrong way, what will happen? What are the risks?
Poor planning for what? Did they
In the news vendor
in the news vendor
model,
like
poor estimation of the costs and like something like that.
Yeah, so you get into sensitivity analysis. So you could probably try and do it depends on how dramatic the cost of shortage and the cost of excess are, and how far off you are. It's really looking at sensitivity analysis, and it's going to include an analysis of the distribution. But that's a good question. I think you'd have to look at the situation specifically and try to understand how far off. And it's easy to calculate, right? Because let's say you have your costs, just like we did for EOQ, we did sensitivity analysis. You could do the same thing here and say, okay, what if I actually picked a Q that's 10% lower, 10% higher? And that's either going to be a cause of either underestimating cost of shortage or excess, or overestimating them. The net effect is, if this is true, I'm going to be a little low or a little high. And you can see how far that drops the profitability. The other thing that people remember, this is the profitability only considering the linear unit level cost of excess and cost of shortage. So for example, in a lot of cases, you'll come out and the profitability, the critical ratio is 0.8. in many retail settings, having an 80% cycle service level is horrible. You want to have a higher level because there are other softer things that you don't know what's going to happen. So just because the profitability, because that's all we're doing is maximizing profitability of the things we know and are included in the optimization. That whole idea that if you stock out of something and then the people start blogging and whatever, that isn't included. Those costs are not included in the cost of a stock out. You can try and include those, but that gets really hard. So usually these news vendor problems will come out with a cycle service level that's much lower than you think is acceptable. Because we usually think 95% cycle service level. You only stock out maybe 5% of the time. Well, what you can do is backwards calculate what does that imply, my ratio, my cost of shortage and cost of excess. It's always a nice way to go back and forth because one is based on profit, the other is based on level of service. And they don't always match. And so I think it's very helpful to make sure you understand both so you can translate them to managers and others.
Good. And they are asking, could you show us how to set up the equation?
Set up what equation?
I think this
I'll send it to you. My writing is too bad. I have it. I truly have it. So I'll send this to you, and I'll send you the reference. It's actually a nice use of a Lagrangian, and so I'll make sure you get that in mind. You can post that out.
Sure. And then more questions. Maybe do you want to make the it's not related to this, but the time exam, the pure assessment exam.
Mm-hmm.
You want to comment on that and make it clear?
Sure, I can.
Yeah.
So we've been doing these now for 3 years, online courses. And the way the edX platform is set up and the way we approach it is it's primarily a learning environment. We want to create an environment where you can go at any time of the day, anywhere in the world, as long as you have internet capability and connectivity, and learn. That's why we give all the videos are out for free, the practice problem, the quick questions. That's why we try to set it up so we give full explanations of each problem. You get instant feedback. That's a learning environment. And that's great. That's the primary role of what we're doing here and what edX is there for, helping people learn. However, we sometimes get asked to make an assessment. I have to say, okay, this person knows it. They have mastery of this topic. So how do you show that? The only way is to do an assessment. And this is to assess, you've got to try to limit things that you would normally give in a learning environment. And so think of the graded weekly assignments, because those are like a next step. Homeworks are a combination, right? A little bit of learning, a little bit of assessment. And so that's why we try to discourage you, or you're not allowed to go on the discussion forums and talk, because we don't want you to collaborate on this assessment side. But after it's due, we'll give you the answers out. And that we didn't always used to do that. And so we want you to learn from each homework assignment, each weekly graded assignment. And we say that's about a 50-50, right? 50% learning, 50% assessment. But to have a pure assessment, we have to be much more rigorous. And that's what the midterm and the final is all about. And those are environments where we give you limited options. We want to, this is the chance for you to demonstrate that you know the concepts. There's very little learning involved there. It's all about assessment. And the only reason we're doing that is to be able to say to someone, a future employee or another university, yes, this student showed mastery of this topic in a way where only they could do it. That's it. And so that's why we try to keep it restricted. We limit collaboration. We limit the number of responses you have. We limit the time because we're trying to show mastery. If we gave you 2 weeks to solve this, at the end of the day, you can solve almost any problem we give you in 2 weeks. We want to do it for a compressed time because we want to say, do they show mastery? And so think of the environments that we set up for everything we do here on edX and for SCX courses. There's learning, there's pure assessment, and then there's some things that are kind of in the middle. In the midterms and finals, pure assessment. And any of you who will continue on and take the comprehensive final exam to earn the whole MicroMasters credential, that will actually be a proctored exam because then we have to show mastery of the whole curriculum. And that's something we take very seriously. And that's why we separate assessment from learning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So guys, yesterday week 8, released, and then it's very cool stuff there.
Inventory.
Yeah,
SQ and RS systems.
SQ and RS systems. So that's really cool stuff. So, and yeah, enjoy the course, enjoy this week, and good luck with the grid assignment, week 8.
Yeah, and let me know how you like the whiteboard thing. I don't know if I used it that well, to be honest, but give me feedback, and I will send out a note with the math.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, guys. See you in the next Hangout event.
Bye.
Bye.